I'm Sam Roberts of the New York Times, and welcome to the New York Times Close-Up. Congressman Adriano Espaillat represents Harlem and parts of the Bronx. He's the successor to the former dean of the New York delegation, Congressman Charles Rangel. He joins us in a moment to discuss some of the areas of pressing concern to him. My Times colleagues weigh in on the important issues of the week so far on the backstory, and I'll offer some additional thoughts on Coda. But first, Congressman Espaillat of Manhattan and the Bronx. He's in the minority in so many ways as a Democrat, born in the Dominican Republic, and was an undocumented immigrant. Welcome, and
thanks
Sam. For joining us.
Thank you so
What's
much.
it like to be a Democrat in the House of Representatives? Does it make any difference what the Democrats do in Washington these days?
I think we could still get some things done while in the absolute minority, and the absolute minority means that we don't control the House, nor the Senate, nor the White House, and that the court is really stacked against us. But even within that very dire condition, I think that we're able to do things. I was able to save the Upward Bound program, a program that provides pre-university training for hundreds of kids and access to some of the best Ivy League schools in the country. We were able to save also 400 units of affordable housing right there at the Lakeview housing on Fifth Avenue and 108th Street. Recently, we saw how the budget, the omnibus bill, was able to put significant dollars towards public housing, capital, operating, and Section 8. So even while in the minority, and the absolute minority, we're able to still get things done for our district. I've been a strong voice, obviously, for immigration.
And if the Democrats take the House, will that make a big difference?
Well, that's like night and day. That's a big difference. And then we'll be in a position to have more equilibrium in Congress, right, and in government. And it's always good to have a level of equilibrium. It forces consensus building. It forces agreements within both sides of the aisle. And I think the country is better off when we have that kind of scenario.
Eric Schneiderman, the Attorney General of New York, and other attorneys general are suing to try and get the census to remove a question on citizenship. What do you recommend to people, assuming that that question is on in 2020? How should people answer that question if they're not citizens?
I don't want to jump the gun and take that as something that already occurred, because we will have to sort of like huddle and come up with a strategy to educate people. And
your district did pretty well last time.
We did extremely well, and you know that's because we had enumerators knocking on doors the old-fashioned way. We had a district office there, a field office, and unfortunately half of those offices across the countries have been eliminated. But we're hoping that we still get those enumerators. But going back to the question of citizenship, obviously it sends a chilling effect out in the entire nation. And people will basically not answer the census form. They will hide. It's fearful in this environment to tell someone, particularly this question that was asked by the Department of Justice. They were the ones that petitioned to have the question in the form. And so people will be scared, obviously, and we're pushing back. I joined the Attorney General in that effort, and we're pushing in Congress to see how we can stop that, as well as organizing and preparing the community that if and when that happens, then we'll be able to come up with a plan to educate the community and sort of like usher them in and ensure that they're safe.
The DREAM Act, where does that stand? Every day we hear something different from the president.
Well, the president continues to use the DREAM Act as leverage. He pivots to the DREAM Act. Every time the Mueller investigation puts up the heat, he pivots to the DREAM Act. When he has a stormy day with Stormy Daniels, he pivots to the DREAM Act. So unfortunately, these young people, 800,000 of them, which are wonderful people, Sam, if you meet them, you will not be able to say no to them. You just cannot say no to them. Because they're workers, members of our armed forces, they're educators, they're caretakers, they're students, obviously. And so this is the best economic development plan that we have for our country, the Dreamers, right? And they capture the public sentiment. 80% of Americans now support them. Unlike any other issue related to immigration in the past, they're polling over 80%. In red states, in blue states, in the Democratic districts and Republican districts, people want them to stay. But yet the president doesn't want them to stay. He continues to use them as leverage. And we have 3 pieces of legislation that are bipartisan in scope. The Clean Dream Act, which is Republican, Democratic led. The Hurd-Aguilar bill, which has some level of border protection in it, but it takes care of the dreamers. And then we had the framework, the immigration framework that was sent to us by 6 senators, 3 Democrats and 3 Republicans, that also has, takes care of the dreamers, their parents for 3 years, and it has a provisions of border protection. Yet the leadership, both in the House and the Senate and the president, don't want it on the floor because they know that it will pass. We have the support on the floor.
We have a president from New York. We have a Senate minority leader from New York. Are we better off or worse off?
Well, we need to have the majority either in the House or the Senate to really have some leverage and, as I said earlier, some equilibrium to ensure that democracy works better, that government is more responsive to all the people of the nation and particularly New York State. And so I'm pushing hard to see if we can get that majority. There are good candidates out there that are really trailblazing through this midterm election. And I think that we have an excellent shot at having a majority of Democrats in the House of Representatives at the end of this year.
And how deep is the Democratic bench for 2020?
I think we're getting some tremendous talent. In fact, even the primaries are really crowded with diverse candidates with different talents from all walks of life. And I think that's good. That invigorates democracy and it strengthens our party to ensure that we have people from all walks of life, younger people. We have people with great new experiences. Myself, I came here on a visitor's visa, and unfortunately I stayed over, but now I'm a member of the U.S. Congress. That's a great statement to make in this time. What a New York story, and hopefully we'll get people from across the board, people that have something to add to the discussion.
Let me ask you a question that I ask just about everyone who comes on this program. If you look ahead for Donald Trump, impeached, indicted, resigned, or reelected?
Well, I'm one of the 6 original members that supported the 5 articles of impeachment. First and foremost, so we felt that he engaged in obstruction of justice when he ordered some of his top deputies to leave the room, and he engaged the former FBI director in trying to entice him to leave his people alone. That's the equivalent of like the mayor being in the room with the police commissioner and a local precinct commander and asking his police commissioner to leave the room and then going ahead and muscling in on the precinct commander and telling him, leave Sam Roberts alone. I mean, I think that's obstruction. Then we have the emoluments course, of course, both domestically and internationally, that seems to be troubling to us as well, 2 other articles of impeachment. So I think that that's the route. The Mueller investigation continues to move forward. He may not be a target, but he continues to be a subject of the investigation, and we see how that develops.
Is that just wishful thinking?
I don't think that's wishful thinking, and people have been arrested and charged with crimes already. So this is not a story from Disney World. This is very much real. It's happening right now, and it's sprinkling around him, and we'll see where it goes. But the Mueller is real. It's a serious investigation, and he's a serious and respected former law enforcement agent.
Let's look a little closer chronologically. Andrew Cuomo running for re-election this year. You supporting him?
I haven't made up my mind. I'm leaning towards supporting the governor. I think he has passed very progressive pieces of legislation. The marriage equality bill. He's done the gun control efforts. We're one of the safest states in the country now. I think only 335 homicides in 2016. Far too much still, but way lower than 2000 back in the 80s and 90s. And the gun laws in New York State are really strong. He's done a good effort to bring immigrants in. I think he's done a good job. Much more needs to be done. The subway system is dilapidating. I think that we need to do much more on transportation issues, and I think he's working on that.
So why not just endorse him?
Well, this is not the political season yet for me. We'll take that up after my re-election in the June primary.
What about the Housing Authority? You have Housing Authority projects in your district.
That's correct.
Citywide. Who is responsible for this? Is it the mayor, the governor, who?
Look, I think there's a lot of finger pointing going on. and I have one of the highest concentration of NYCHA units in the entire country, both in East Harlem and in Harlem. And you have a $17 billion deficit, capital deficit, that may be reassessed, and it may jump to a $26 billion deficit. That means that buildings need to get their roof done. Pointing needs to be done on bricks. New boilers, new elevators. This is very costly, deep pocket stuff. And you shouldn't get involved in this finger pointing exercise. The governor just put in $250 million, and in addition, on top of another 250, so it's $500 million. The federal government put in a handsome amount of dollars for capital operation and Section 8. And the city is getting to put into, at the end of the day, we may have $1 billion on the table. And finger pointing won't help matters. We need to know where to spend that money, to spend it smart, in a way that it will improve the quality of life of the people living in NYCHA.
Is there any hope of getting money from Washington for public housing, for transportation?
Well, we have been assigned funding for NYCHA, transportation. We also were able to get the tunnel in there. In this omnibus bill, we were able to get gateway money for that important tunnel that's to be built across that new city that's being built on the west side, on the rail yards, right to Jersey.
Enormous.
And that's so important because the Northeast corridor, the rail corridor for the Northeast, is very fragile. Anytime anything goes wrong, it can pretty much paralyze the region. So now
that you're going to Washington instead of Albany, you know that.
Oh, I know that firsthand. Yes, I know that firsthand. So certainly this tunnel is an important piece of infrastructure that will ease up congestion in the area, and I think it's very important. But it's, again, another deep pocket issue. We put monies in the omnibus bill for that, as well as for NYCHA.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sam.
Congressman Adriano Espaillat of Manhattan and the Bronx. And coming up, my Times colleagues join me to discuss the week's leads on The Backstory. Welcome back to the New York Times Close Up. What kind of week has it been? Well, where to begin? More involuntary leave takings from the federal government, a budget agreement in Albany that left Governor Cuomo acting like the de facto mayor of New York City. Joining me to discuss these stories and more, my New York Times colleagues, contributing writer Eleanor Randolph, Albany Bureau reporter Vivian Wang, and City Hall Bureau reporter J. David Goodman. Vivian, take us through the steps of what it was like at Albany last Friday night when the budget was passed. How do the legislators find out what's in the budget between the time they get the budget, the time they pass the budget? What actually happens?
Between the time they get the budget and they pass the budget, it's only a couple hours. I mean, most
So
of
they are in deep thought, reading it, perusing
of course,
it?
Parsing every single word. No, I mean, most of it is negotiated behind closed doors, and so a lot of the legislators probably found out around the same time that reporters found out. And we're still finding out. We are still finding out, and it was totally unclear if we would even have a budget agreement on time. I mean, Friday morning, legislators were saying that everything was being held up by one state senator, and then suddenly Friday night we had a deal, so it was totally unpredictable.
And the one state senator, Simcha Felder, how does he hijack the budget over a sort of esoteric issue? This sounds like the Israeli parliament, actually.
Well, it's because he's a Democrat, but he caucuses with the Republicans, and he is that deciding vote that gives them the majority in the chamber, even though technically on paper they have a minority. And so nobody, no Democrats, no Republicans want to totally alienate him because they all need his vote or they all want to court his vote at least to sit in the majority.
And this is whether the state education department can oversee religious schools. I thought the state education department is supposed to oversee religious schools.
Right. Well, I mean, so in the past, it was that individual school districts were responsible for deciding whether or not private schools in their areas were, their curriculums were on par with the public schools. But for the first time now, the state education department has the authority to determine that equivalency. So you could argue that actually Senator Felder's push backfired a little bit.
Eleanor, explain all this to me.
Well, you know, what was really interesting is sort of all the things that were left out of the budget, that, like jail reform, bail reform, voting reform, all those things were left out.
Ethics reform.
Ethics reform, all that sort of stuff. Basically, the budget is how everything gets done in Albany. It has been forever and ever. And so right after the budget, Cuomo and the Democrats in the state Senate decide that they're going to be lovey-dovey. And so it's a really fascinating political moment for Cuomo. And I think part of the reason that this all happened was because Cynthia Nixon is running against him in the Democratic primary.
So the independent so-called independent Democratic caucus that was in coalition with the Republicans has now moved back supposedly to join the Democrats, but it's not enough to give the Democrats a majority in the Senate because of Simcha Felder, again, this one lone voice in defense of religious schools.
It's really interesting. First of all, it's probably very fragile, this Democratic unity. I mean, Democratic unity is always fragile, as you know, but...
democracy is messy, as they say.
That's right. But the thing is, these independent Democrats are really worried because they're being primaried. There's some really interesting candidates suddenly running against them in the primary. And Albany politicians do not like to be primaried. It just terrifies them to death. So you've got the independent Democrats being primaried, and you've got Cuomo being primaried.
And David, if the governor rather is sort of taking control of the housing authority, the MTA, which he already has control over, Rikers Island, is this why the mayor is spending so much time out of town now?
No, actually, the mayor's been spending more time around here, and his wife, the first lady, has been traveling more recently. But in fact, she's going to Manchester, New Hampshire over the weekend, I assume, to meet New Hampshire constituents who have moved out of New York City. I don't know. The governor has found his ways of needling the mayor because, to go back to what Eleanor was saying, he blames the mayor for Cynthia Nixon's run. Cynthia Nixon was a longtime supporter of the mayor's, has been a kind of advisor, sat on boards, and is just very close to the mayor. She's running for governor, and not only does she challenge the governor directly, but she supports all these IDC members and
the independent Democrats.
Exactly, and not only rhetorically is she sort of arguing that Cuomo has been helping the Republicans by supporting this this independent Democratic caucus, but by running, she draws more attention to these challenges, and those challengers some of them are very young, they're very green, first-time candidates, but by having someone like that get so much media attention and it draws all of them up with her, and so what ends up happening is that this whole coalition and the governor are suddenly worried, and they can do this to take some of the air out of the sails by having this announcement that, for all practical purposes, has no political or policy effect for the rest of the year, but politically, if they can hold it together till September, it'll have, hopefully, they think, a great effect for them.
Why does the governor blame Cynthia Nixon's candidacy on the mayor? I mean, when Zephyr Teachout ran 4 years ago, the mayor wasn't necessarily behind that.
Right. I mean, well, people that are running or that have been involved in Cynthia's campaign have been former advisors, and in one case, a campaign worker for the mayor, the guy who ran his outside nonprofit, the Campaign for New York, Bill Hires, was working with Cynthia Nixon. So there is a direct connection there, and I think the governor is also prone to see sort of
conspiracy.
Well, I wasn't going to say it that way, but hidden hands behind every sort of action, and so he's really made it his sort of goal, it seems, to go after the mayor in sort of kind for what Cynthia Nixon has been doing with him. That may backfire on him, though. He's really, he's made people who might have been skeptical of the mayor sympathetic to the mayor when he attacks him on NYCHA. I mean, and the mayor had a good line today, which is that the governor hadn't been to NYCHA in 5 years, and it's not as if the problems just developed there overnight. This is a long-standing major, capital need in the city that the governor now is sort of taking a direct interest in.
And the same is true certainly with the MTA.
Absolutely.
Vivian, was there progress on the issue of sexual harassment in Albany?
The governor has certainly made a big deal out of his women's agenda, and especially now that he's being challenged by Cynthia Nixon. And there certainly were developments. They have now banned non-disclosure agreements unless the victim expressly wants that.
That's in terms of a settlement?
Right, no secret settlements, essentially. They've banned mandatory arbitration. They have extended protections, not just to state workers, but to independent contractors across the state, so it's public and private sector. But at the same time, a lot of people have said that these policies don't go far enough, that they were developed behind closed doors without the input of victims or stakeholders or public hearings. For example, there is a requirement that if any payments are made by somebody who's found responsible for sexual harassment, they would need to reimburse the state for it. It couldn't be taxpayer money, but that only applies if they were actually found responsible. It doesn't apply to any settlements that might occur, which is, of course, where a vast majority, or at least a lot of these cases go.
Eleanor, did you want to weigh in?
No, it just felt very, it felt like weak tea, as we say. But, at least it's a step in the right direction. I mean, Albany, it's been notorious for the way interns have been abused, the way, there were times when you couldn't get in an elevator with some of those legislators up there. So, as long as it really applies to them and can, and if you could really enforce that it's not taxpayer money when they pay women for their abuse, it will be okay. But it does look like you have to climb a mountain to get there.
David, the mayor trying to fire his own investigation commissioner, is this like Trump and Mueller?
Well, he hasn't expressly said that he's trying to fire him yet. I mean, it's no secret that over time, Mark Peters, who's the Department of Investigation commissioner, he was his campaign treasurer during the campaign. Over time, they've fallen out, and Peters.
Isn't that good? I mean, to have an independent investigation commissioner?
I think that's probably true. I think the mayor doesn't see it that way, and Peters, of his own volition, has sort of tried to take into himself more power over an investigative arm that looks into schools, and that's meant to have greater independence. At least that's what some believe. Peters believes that he can take it over, and that's been the sort of wedge that the mayor thinks he can come in and maybe develop a case against Peters. And so he had an executive order earlier this week saying that the mayor would now have to, or Mark would have to run by the mayor any new candidate for that position. But really, this is about, the investigation department has been sort of getting closer to the city council, and the council has tried to express or show that it has its own sort of ability to exact or enact investigations and sort of go after the mayor. And so it seems like the mayor's way of pushing back. But whether it's like a Mueller situation, I don't think so. I mean, the mayor does have to show some kind of cause, or at least explain himself if he fires Mark Peters. And in every other situation where someone has stepped down, there's always been a story. There's never been a real explanation about it. And I think the mayor's kind of loath to do that.
Thanks to my Times colleagues, Eleanor Randolph, Vivian Wang, and J. David Goodman for joining us. And I'll have some additional thoughts with Coda next. These days, I'm writing daily obituaries for the New York Times. Even before last weekend, when the legislature punted on congestion pricing, I considered writing an advance obituary on the premise that its death appeared to be inevitable. After it was flatly rejected by the state assembly during budget negotiations with the governor, I was prepared to declare it dead. Accounts of his death might have been premature. Back in January, the governor's Fix NYC advisory panel report proposed that congestion pricing be introduced in 3 phases. Phase 1 would invest money to improve transit connections between Manhattan and the other boroughs and toughen enforcement of traffic laws. Phase 2 would levy a surcharge on taxis and for-hire vehicles south of 96th Street to subsidize mass transit. Phase 3 would impose a congestion pricing charge on trucks entering Manhattan south of 60th Street and then on all vehicles. The advisory panel offered no fixed timetable. In the Alice in Wonderland ways of Albany, and this being a state election year, New York lawmakers opted for Phase 2 first, the taxi and for-hire vehicle surcharge. Still, by doing so, they opened the door to the entire Fix NYC plan and its Move NY predecessor, the one envisioned by former Traffic Commissioner Sam Schwartz, who's been pushing congestion pricing since 1971. This, he told me the other day, is the first element of a congestion pricing plan that ever got state legislative approval. The surcharge is supposed to raise $400 million for the MTA. Now, that's less than half a percentage point of state-generated revenue, but it's still a considerable amount. Mass transit ought to be a national responsibility, but it isn't. Congress considers it our problem, not theirs. Here's why. New Yorkers account for about 40% of all public transportation riders in America. In the last decade, mass transit ridership in the rest of the country dipped 7%. In the New York area, it soared by 20%. Later this year, a 10-member Metropolitan Transportation Sustainability Advisory Group will draft the fine print on what congestion pricing will look like. The group is dominated by state appointees. What you need, the governor told Errol Lewis on New York One the other day, is somebody who understands how to cut through the politics and cut through the blather. With great fanfare, when he was poised to open the $2.5 billion a mile 2nd Avenue subway, Mr. Cuomo finally cut through the blather himself. You know who runs the MTA, he said? The governor has the majority of members. And what I said is, I'm going to step up and take responsibility. Which means that if he's reelected, whatever happens to congestion pricing, he, and not the mayor, will deserve the credit or the blame. For the New York Times and CUNY TV, I'm Sam Roberts.